Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the very clear official line from the White House on the only viable conditions for peace talks over Ukraine being hand in hand with the complete withdrawal of the Russian military from all of the country after a comically tragic fallback from Kherson at the end of last week. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, should we take a quick look at that Russian evacuation of Kherson, last week then? I really don't know what to make of it. I have a casual interest in military strategy, but I'm not a strategist. I follow those who are, and I've said in the past, those who have been proven right time and time again about what will happen, and they are a little confused about this. Just a reminder that Kherson is one of the regions that Russia claims to have annexed just a few weeks ago. You know, they held their sham referendum and announced that it was part of the Russian Federation now. And when Russian authorities were asked, OK, so where's the borders now? Where have you redrawn the borders? They couldn't answer. This fantasy annexation was just a farce. Nobody even thought to draw a map and put crayon on with their new territory to show it to the world. Not that it matters, because 6 weeks later, the Ukrainian and EU flags are flying from the centre of the city. The way is clear now for Ukraine to begin their operation to retake Crimea. And there doesn't seem to be a lot for Russia to do, other than try and ride out the winter and get ready for major spring offensives, assuming that there isn't going to be another big offensive this winter. You know, the HIMARS that Ukraine keep using to devastate in effect is forcing Russia to withdraw from its own bases. Anything that's in range that's a target, they have to keep moving things like helicopters back. That in turn means the Russian troops on the ground are denied support, especially from the air, when the Ukrainian offensive comes. So Russia was forced to evacuate from Kherson last week, and it wasn't organised at all. I know, shocker. The troops had no idea what was going on, it seems. It was all very confused, but it looks like it was reported that Russia was withdrawing, from what I can tell, before their own soldiers knew. The upshot of it being that the Ukrainian forces knew that they were going to be withdrawing before they did. You know, cue the very predictable chaos of that mad, panicked, never mind withdrawal, run away. Blind panic is how it can be best described, as more than a few Russian soldiers got themselves trapped or drowned trying to get across the river even. I mean, I'll be honest, part of me wants to do this video just because I want to see if the usual Putin supporters that over the last half year or so in the comments are still insisting he's got a master plan. The Russian military is now so badly organised that they literally told Ukrainian forces that they were pulling out of Kherson before they told their own troops. I suppose, to be fair, it takes carrier pigeon a lot longer to get messages out than through the news networks. But it means that Russia has now lost thousands more troops, goodness knows what hardware, assuming that hardware even worked. There even seems to be a suggestion that Ukraine could continue to push over the winter. At the moment, you would think, consolidate what they've got now, and then everyone hunker down for the winter spring offensive. But, you know, Crimea is of such symbolic importance. I mean, Kherson will be a big blow for Putin, surely. But losing Crimea, that'd be the end, wouldn't it? Which brings me on to what President Biden's national security advisor was telling the press at the weekend. Tankies and other Putin supporters keep saying, oh, we need to get round the negotiating table. We need to talk this out. Yeah, sure. When Russia buggers off from someone else's land, then we can talk. We can then talk about reparations and war crime trials. But the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, made 5 points about America's position on the end of the war. Actually, to be fair, what he said he was going to make 4 points, then he made 5, but he's maybe not that great at maths. But the first point he made was that it's up to Ukraine to decide how and when they want to negotiate. In other words, the United States is providing support to an ally being invaded. They're not pushing for Ukraine to weaken its position just to satisfy some arseholes elsewhere. The second point made was that peace is based on the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. The US view is that Ukraine has to have control of all of its territory, and the UN is clear about where the borders of that territory lie. It doesn't include the new ones that Russia actually forgot to draw on with a Sharpie when they were pretending to annex even more of Ukraine. In fact, the recent annexations form the third part of the US official line, that continuing to try and annex more of Ukraine is not a serious sign that Russia even wants to negotiate. I mean, what's the point in urging Ukraine to negotiate when Russia doesn't want to? Fourth, that the US are doing everything they can to make sure that when the negotiations do begin, because they will have to begin at some point, Ukraine is in the strongest possible position. And fifth, the point that a lot of people have been making for months now, not least those in Ukraine, if Russia chooses to stop fighting, it is the end of the war. If Ukraine chooses to stop fighting, it is the end of Ukraine. This has ever been the case. And this is an important statement of resolve, because it has always been the question, I suppose recently not so much, but there was always that question regarding this war. Will Western governments maintain their resolve? Western economies are suffering from this. There's a huge increase in the cost of fuel. Ukraine's a major food producer, and much of that has been knackered by this. There's been a lot of ramifications, a lot of domestic disquiet, and these governments all got their eye on elections. And in America, they've just had the elections now. So they're sort of over there. But the resolve leading up to those elections, it was a bit like, what's it going to be like? Would the major governments within NATO, and really the US really is what we mean, stand firm? Or would they push for a redrawing of the European borders for short-term comfort back home with eyes on domestic opinion and elections? It's not a question anymore. Resolve is sky high, and that resolve is not going to be put under further pressure now, is it? There's nothing now to put it under pressure. Russia's got nothing left. For all Putin's threats of whatever, nuclear force and so, he hasn't used it, has he? He's now been beaten back to his own borders. He hasn't used it. Putin has messed up, but there's no sign he's actually insane. The use of nuclear force, though it's too serious to dismiss out of hand, would have been the end for Putin's Russia. The international response would have been fierce. And this is the end for Putin as well. And hopefully the entire premise of his regime, although there's a big question mark over that. But certainly for him, he's lost allies. Russia's going to suffer a humiliating defeat that will not allow him to continue. Because for the last 8 years, they've gotten used to the fact that the Donbass region and Crimea is part of Russia. It was never, but they held it. They owned it. They controlled it. So Russia's got used to that as being the norm. Well, it's not going to be in a few months' time. I'd like to think that the Western resolve, particularly from the United States, which is always, as I say, vital importance, is because they realise that if you appease now, you have bigger problems later on. You could easily think that because it's always the case. We've got so many lessons from history on this. But Putin didn't just launch his full-scale invasion. It came after years and years of testing the waters with aggressive invasions on a smaller scale. If Europe and America had stood up to him from the start, when he was literally just testing the waters, seeing, what he could get away with, this would have all been avoided, and so much more as well. Where Ukraine's personally involved, if we'd have repelled the tiny, unflagged expeditionary force that initially wandered into Crimea in 2014, the war now taking place wouldn't have. You would like to think that today's leaders realise that only by standing up to megalomaniacs earlier on do you save yourself much more pain later. Because at some point you have to deal with them. Because at some point they march on your borders. But I suspect not. I think as a society we just don't seem to learn lessons. I just think Ukraine has made such regular progress in pushing Russian forces back, that there was never that period of time where people could say, look, it's a stalemate here. It's not going to end until something gives. And Putin's dug in, so we just need to pressure Ukraine. If this war was going to drag on for years, maybe it would be different. I'd hope not, but I think it probably would have been. The warnings came that to Putin, ceasefire means reload. Don't settle for anything less than the full withdrawal from Ukraine. Well, now we can see that that's going to happen as a direct result of a combination of Ukrainian resolve and brilliance and Russian incompetence. Ukraine is going to be whole again next year. Next summer, maybe. I suppose. I don't see any reason why not. In fact, we're hosting the Eurovision Song Contest next year on Ukraine's behalf. That's in May. Quite nice if that turned into a victory festival. And it could be all over at that point, couldn't it? Once Ukraine's got its territory back, there's a lot of rebuilding to be done. There's a lot of tidying up to be done. There's a lot of dealing with, those in Russia who were responsible for this to be done. But then, you know, once they've got the territory back, they can invite, they can secure their own border, NATO help. You know, they'll join NATO. They'll also join the EU, which is what Putin really raged against. Yes, there's still work to be done. Don't imagine that happens really quickly, but, you know, the process can begin proper. Finland and Sweden also join NATO. You know, I'm not quite sure that was Putin's plan from the start. It's just now a question of how quickly it all takes place. If Ukraine takes Crimea, will it even be worth Russia pretending to keep going? Will they even bother trying to defend the Donbass region? What's the point? They'd lose that as well in time anyway. It's not even like they could hold on to it. You know, surely it just should wrap up really quickly at the point Crimea's gone. Yeah, we'll see, I suppose. We might even see sooner than we think. Because if they do carry on pushing over winter, I mean, I suppose it'll be slower. But there we are anyway. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.